My girlfriend, 22 female, confessed to me, 24 male, that she had been speaking to someone else over Instagram and that she had felt attracted to him, but that she was feeling guilty and she regretted it. I duck and lost my crap. Why? You must be wondering. After all, nothing happened. Well, I have a miraculous ability to spot people's lies, and this crap was the biggest bullcrap ever heard. She was cold since the beginning of the relationship, so feeling guilty for just talking didn't seem like her. Being too attached to her, I tried to let it go and focus on work, but something was off and I could still feel it. The paranoia was eating me from the inside out. During the next weeks, we were mutually distant, and she had been surprisingly social, going out with different friends, or so she said, even though she barely has any. This gave me enough to work out that she had told me a half-truth and that she was still doing shady stuff. I still don't understand the reason to half confess something to just keep on doing it. The relationship was pretty much dead in every aspect, and I had suggested the idea of breaking it up because I saw no point anymore, but she insisted on trying and trying, because I had located her a good job and she was making big progress thanks to my friends. When I realized this was her reason to go on, something clicked inside me. I had been there for her through unimaginable familiar crap, professional frustrations, and personal betrayals from her friends. I gave her my all the time. I lived to make her happy. But in reality, she had been living on my expense and leaving me in the dark. Being the ducking idiot that I was, I started plotting my Arctic cold revenge in silence. I contacted a random girl, Jay, that gave me her number some months before these events, but that I never got to call due to me being faithful. I explained why I never called, and she was down for it. The first date we only flirted, but a kiss from her surprised me at the end. It made me feel awkward and guilty. The very next day, I waited for my girlfriend to get in the shower and opened her messages to snoop around. I discovered what I had suspected for various weeks. She had kept the show going, and to incredible levels. Going out multiple times a week, sending pictures, sexting very often, and even during time windows in which I was with her. Copying and pasting sex-related messages that she sent to me when we met. Even posing for him with clothes my parents gifted her for Christmas. My guilt flew out the window. Somehow I managed to control myself from freaking out and exposing her. This mustered all the courage and blind rage I needed, so that night I called Jay again and went through with it in the most spectacular, anger-driven way I could imagine. For the next 2 months or so, I kept this up. Had sex with Jay as much as hard, and as often as I could while still being a normal boyfriend. Some days, I spent the entire evening ducking Jay just to see my girlfriend at night and duck her some more while I focused on the hate in my head. After that, I usually left out little hints of mistrust towards her, just to make her feel anxious and guilty. In the end, I broke things off with my girlfriend, uncovering her lies, but kept my things to myself so I could keep my moral superiority over hers. She denied it all even after I showed proof. She cried for days about getting back together. This part actually made me feel like it was all for nothing, and never really gave me closure. Jay got comfortable around me, but I was far gone into the narrative of this plan. I couldn't even consider going out with anyone at this point, so I had to stop things with her too. In a much less dramatic way, because she was partly aware of what was going on with me and was mostly in this for the sex. Some months passed, and the girl that my ex most hated, because she was very popular among common male friends, happened to come work with me. To my surprise, we hooked up and kind of got close to each other, but not serious. My ex was still bitter over the breakup when she found out and texted me to confirm it. I avoided answering and instead drove to her house to tell her in person and watch her crumble. Edit. All this crap did nothing but mess with my head. Her cheating gave me anxiety of other people betraying me, but what I did proved that I too was a piece of crap like no other. Since the realization of this, my treatment for women and relationships has changed greatly. I would never pull some crap like this again. But at the same time, it had to happen for me to change and see the consequences of letting oneself go with rage and hate. It only leads to pain, not healing. Edit 2. For those feeling bad for Jay, I only chose her as my accomplice, because she was in a relationship when she gave me her number, hence was trying to cheat. Basically, I thought I was making justice in more than one name. Nevertheless, I feel bad for her. She didn't deserve being caught in my crap and treated like that. She was the only one smart enough to ghost forever. Cheating wife is remorseful after I found out the infidelity while she was in her hometown. When she returned, I threw her on a curb and said she'd get the divorce papers soon. I met my wife in an online book club about 10 years ago. At that time, I did not know anything about her beside the books she was reading. Found out that she was going through chemo radiation for stage 4 metastatic cancer, so I messaged a couple of guys in the group asking if they are willing to send me small gifts so I can organize a care package for her. She received the package in the mail and was so happy, thankful, and appreciative. We started to message each other privately, became friends, and eventually it blossomed into a long-distance relationship. I continued to send her letters and small gifts which she would open after every chemo appointment until she finally went into remission. We lived 1,000 miles apart. I flew to visit her, she flew to visit me. After all the back and forth, she eventually moved to my state. We bought a house together in 2015, got engaged the same year, and got married in 2016. On the surface, it was a great marriage. We had one argument in the entire 6 years of marriage. I was making good money, which gave her the opportunity to land her dream job, which she still holds today. We had a great income and no kids. Remove the stressor of money and kids out of marriage, and there is little left to argue about. If we had disagreements, we resolved them within hours, or so we thought. I will expand on this later. In 2020, we sold our house and moved 1,000 miles to live closer to her family. She had a hysterectomy in May 2021 for chronic bleeding, required 2 units of blood prior to surgery because her hemoglobin was critically low. I was fully supportive of her. She took 12 weeks off work to recover. I took 6 weeks off work to care for her. The surgeon cleared her to return to work after 6 weeks, but I was supportive of and encouraged her to take the full 12 weeks off to recover. After I returned to work and a week before she was scheduled to work, she flew out of state to see her female friend and coworker. During that stay, she had sex with another man with whom she was having an emotional affair with for months. I don't know if I was the first person she had sexual experience with post-surgery or if it was him. He knew that she was married. How I discovered the cheating was completely by accident. Last weekend, she was out of town for a conference. A couple of things, which in retrospect had no direct relation to the affair, occurred that gave me a bad feeling in the gut, and I went through her computer for the first time in our marriage. I saw the explicit texts and photos. I picked her up at the airport, drove her to our house, parked in the driveway, turned to her and said, "Look at me. I know everything. I know that you've been cheating on me. I have seen the photos and text messages. Here is what is going to happen. You are going to go inside and grab your essentials. You can go stay with your parents or friends. The next time you will hear from me will be through my divorce lawyer." She did not deny anything. She was walking through the house to pick up her belongings. I was walking behind her because it felt like a stranger was walking in my house and going through our belongings. I never raised my voice or my hand at her, just like during our 6 years of marriage, during the entire process. After she left, I turned on the alarm system and stacked chairs again the front door. I was afraid that she'd come back if I fell asleep. It felt like an intruder was breaking into my house. I slept for a total of 50 minutes during that last 24 hours. After she left, my intention was to call a divorce lawyer the next day. I could not get a day off from my work. I texted her to come to the house. The title is in both of our names, so I was not legally allowed to kick her out. Before I left for work, I wanted to make sure that she was not going to do anything crazy in the house alone. We agreed to talk after I returned from work. We talked for 2 days in a row. There was a lot of crying from both of us. What looked like a great marriage on a surface was marred by the lack of communication for 6 years from both of us. We both avoided conflict and instead chose to bottle in our feelings. We learned more about each other in 2 days than we did over the course of the entire marriage. While she was away on her conference trip, I drove 1.5 hours to help her 90-year-old grandfather get out of bed, provide incontinence care, toilet him, help with breakfast, and give medication. This was the second time in 2 weeks. She texted me how much she loved me and how she appreciated what I was doing for her grandfather. She claims that she was going to break up with me after returning from the conference. Break up under the guise of falling out of love with me and not mention the infidelity to avoid hurting me. I honestly don't believe her and have a strong feeling that she'd have continued to string me along. Every single issue could have been resolved if each one of us put in just a little bit more effort. While we shared some common interests, we could not relate to the interests which were most important to each one of us. On the first day, I blamed her entirely. On the following day, I started to blame myself for not being an attentive husband. After working from home all day, all she wanted to do was talk to me after I came home from work. I just wanted peace and silence after slaving away for 12 hours. She wanted to talk about social and personal issues which were important to her, but I did not even offer a listening ear because I could not relate to her experience. This is just a couple of examples. There are dozens of others. And I don't claim to have been a perfect husband. I have my faults. But I genuinely tried to make her happy, at least as much and in ways I could. I found her at the lowest point in her life: offensive previous marriage, cancer, anxiety, depression, seizures, and future alcohol offense. Excluding the affair, we will be getting divorced at the highest point in her life. She is in cancer remission, abstinent from alcohol for 1.5 years, no seizures for 3+ years. Her anxiety, depression are better controlled, has a great group of friends and family who live close by. And I'm at my lowest point now. I uprooted my life for her after the move and have no local support. I haven't told my parents because they will be devastated. I'm afraid that the news will send both of them to the hospital because they loved her so much. We are currently living as roommates of friends in our house. We have agreed to make the divorce and transition as smooth as possible for both of us, even if it takes months. She offered for me to keep the house, take the newer car, keep both of our cats, etc. I can see how remorseful she is. Yesterday, we attended a virtual Al-Anon for family meeting, therapy for family members of alcoholics. What resonated with me was that family members should not blame themselves for the behavior of alcoholics. I feel like I'm blaming myself for my wife's infidelity when I'm the actual victim here. I'm here for support from others who've gone through similar experiences. I'll need to learn to trust my future partner when the person whom I had complete trust in blindsided me like this. My first session with Infidelity Survivors Anonymous is this Saturday. Edit: I will add this detail for some context and not to excuse or give a legitimate reason for her to cheat. She was my first serious relationship. I had a couple of flings before her, but that did not progress to anything more serious because of a problem I had, ED. And while we had a spicy sex life when we were in LDR, once we started living together, the problem returned. At one point early in the relationship, we went many months without having sex. She begged me to see a doctor, but I kept putting it off. Entirely my fault. I was younger, less mature, and frankly embarrassed. Eventually, at age 29, I'm 33 now, I got tested and found out I had very low testosterone level. And I don't know how many years I've lived this way. Probably a decade, because I always felt like I had less energy than my peers. I received T replacement at that time and felt like a new man. We started having sex again, but admittedly it was never as good as it was in LDR, and never lived up to the fantasy we had prior to living together. There were still times when I couldn't stay hard, though they were much less frequent than before. She did say yesterday that while the sex was less frequent, she did enjoy it when we did have it. What I lacked in one area, I made up for it in another area, giving her oral, which she loved, and vice versa. Recently, I started to feel like my T levels were low again. Now, more mature, I went to get tested and have a follow-up visit next week for results. Again, this is not to minimize her infidelity, but if I talk about her flaws, it's only fair that I mention my own to paint the complete picture.